There's been a bit of a buzz in the Destiny community lately surrounding supers. Recently, Bungie made some changes to bring roaming supers more into the meta by increasing the rate at which players are able to recharge their super energy. And believe it or not, roaming supers have begun to actually have some practical meta builds since these changes went live. But that got me thinking. Supers in Destiny are kind of weird. Why is it that in the past 7 years of Destiny 2, only instant cast supers have really seen any play? Were roaming supers really that bad that they weren't worth taking at all? Were instant supers just too strong? Or was it something else? Today, I'm going to explore what is going on with supers in Destiny. Hey everyone, I'm Rizeki and welcome to my design analysis of supers in Destiny 2. As always, thanks so much for checking out the video. If you're new here or haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and maybe even leave a like on the video if you end up enjoying it. It helps me out and it lets you know when I upload a new video. Oh, by the way, for this weekend only, you could use my code Rizeki30 over at our channel partner AdvancedGG to get 30% off any order, including the Rizeki Ice Shaker, which, by the way, is the best shaker of all time, no bias or anything. Or you could grab the new Haikyuu flavors if you're more into that. Make sure to check out all of this with the link down below in the description and use my code Rizeki30 for 30% off. Alright, supers. If you've been playing Destiny for any amount of time, you, just like me, probably default to choosing specific supers when building your character. Solar Hunter takes Golden Gun, Void Warlock takes Nova Bomb, Arc Titan takes Thunder Crash, but those were never the only options for your super. Each of the light subclasses has 2, sometimes 3 options for your super ability. However, it pretty much felt like those were the only options available. Why is that? I think the best place to start is by going over instant cast supers like those mentioned above and talk about why they are actually so good. Instant cast supers are those where you click your super button and your character immediately throws out their ability. Nova Bomb, Thunder Crash, Shadow Shot, Silence and Squall, and others are in this category. Golden Gun on Solar Hunter can either be an instant cast or a roaming super depending on if you're using the Celestial Nighthawk exotic. Regardless, these supers are instant. Press a button, ability activates, ability ends. The number one reason these supers are generally the meta choice is simply because they are typically high burst DPS abilities. Casting a Nova Bomb or a Gathering Storm is an extremely easy way to instantly deal massive damage to targets, especially during boss encounters. In the Year of the Final Shape, all classes now have access to Star Eater skills as well, providing an even more powerful super for those boss DPS phases. Even outside of bosses, these instant burst damage supers can quickly dispose of champions or other large targets. In activities such as Onslaught, these supers allow players to even delete large groups of enemies immediately, acting as an emergency button or relieving pressure in a difficult situation. Gaining super energy for these supers is fairly easy as well, since for the most part, instant cast supers are solely used during a boss DPS phase. You could build up the energy between phases without worrying about needing to use your super during your general gameplay loop. We'll actually be coming back to this point later on in the video. Supers such as Blade Barrage can immediately gain energy back with the Shards of Galanor exotic as well. Since a lot of instant cast DPS supers have exotics that allow for instant energy regeneration, just like Galanor, it makes it that much more compelling to take these supers. You will always have it when you need it, and sometimes you'll even get it multiple times per damage phase. There is another side to the instant cast super coin. Until now, I've only talked about damage supers, but there are other supers that are actually instant cast that do not necessarily do damage. There are a number of utility supers that also fall into the instant cast category. Supers such as Well of Radiance, Shadow Shot, and Ward of Dawn are some of these. While providing utility over damage, these supers still see play over roaming supers anyway. And that leads me to the real reason instant cast supers have been so prevalent. In a game where the vast majority of damage and offensive capabilities come from our weapons, it would make a lot of sense that players would opt to use their weapons primarily over their abilities for damage. Players choose to take instant cast supers not entirely because of their utility or damage output, but also because these abilities take the least amount of time away from gunplay. Casting a Well of Radiance takes a second or two, provides a team buff, and just allows you to continue using your high damage output weapons. Casting Gathering Storm takes, again, a second or two, deals a huge chunk of damage to the boss, and also allows you to continue using your high damage weapons. Instant supers integrate seamlessly into the vast majority of builds, since they take the least amount of investment in terms of your gameplay loop to use effectively. Roaming supers, on the other hand, are tricky. A roaming super, in contrast to an instant cast, provides you with a new set of more powerful abilities, which you could use for a short period of time. Arc Staff, Song of Flame, and Sentinel Shield are some examples. Actually, funnily enough, almost every Darkness super, with the exception of Silence and Squall and Silk Strike, are all roaming supers. Roaming supers fall into a very different use case from instant cast supers. Generally speaking, since roaming supers are a transformation that lasts for a relatively long period of time, they are meant to be integrated into your primary gameplay loop. You are essentially trading your weapons and abilities for a much stronger set of abilities for a short period. Do I hear Demon Hunter Metamorphosis? Wait, wrong game. Sorry. On their own, roaming supers are actually really good at what they do. These supers are mostly positioned for clearing large groups of adds with ease. Arc Staff is a great example of this. It absolutely chews through enemies. It definitely gives AoE weapons a run for their money. Taking a roaming super demands that you build around having the highest uptime on it you can. While an instant cast super can be integrated into any build due to their short cast time, roaming supers are almost useless if you don't make the most out of using them. Roaming supers are ad clear machines. Typical instant cast builds need to focus their weapon loadouts on ad clear, since the super doesn't provide enough constant ad clear to handle it on its own. Roaming supers are entirely focused on the opposite. They are ad clear, allowing players to free up their weapon and loadout to optimize for different things outside of strict ad clear. There are some issues with roaming supers though. In a vacuum, these supers are pretty solid. Top tier ad clear for 20 to 30 seconds is really strong, especially in difficult endgame content. However, the biggest issue with these supers is this. The energy requirements for roaming supers is much greater of a limitation compared to instants. Since the roaming super is taking the place of ad clear in your build, you would want to have your energy regained as quickly as possible. You want to have the shortest downtime between supercasts as you can. You need your super to ad clear for you. Without it, you are pretty much less effective at playing the game. The other key issue is in the transformation period. Since roaming supers almost always remove your weapons, this can either be a blessing or a curse. For example, a poorly timed champion spawn could brick your entire game plan. Trying to use Arc Staff into a barrier shield isn't going to do anything except waste your super. The final wrench in the cogs of the roaming super is actually just encounter design. Many dungeon or raid encounters just actively dissuade you from wanting to use a roaming super. Whether it's because it's a boss encounter and you need the DPS provided by an instant super, or because an encounter is just one that requires mechanics. If you're in the first encounter of Root of Nightmares, you can't really just pop a Fist of Havoc and easily trigger the nodes. You don't have your weapons to shoot them after all. Even in an encounter like the first Vault of Glass encounter, you might actually prefer an instant super. Sure, there's lots of adds to defeat, but walking into those adds with a melee super might just mark you for negation, or you might want to dispose of a Wyvern as quickly as possible with your super because you ran out of heavy ammo. Realistically, the only places where roaming supers can edge out instants are in strikes, seasonal activities, or onslaught, simply because of how the activities are designed. But there's actually one last thing that has given instant cast supers the edge. Yeah, roaming supers could give ad clear weapons a run for their money, but it's close. Arc Staff can tear through groups of enemies, but so can Forbearance, Kvazstov, Volt Shot, Volatile Rounds. Players who bring even a decent ad clear weapon can defeat enemies well enough to justify not needing a roaming super. Even with a roaming super technically being a better ad clear tool, it needed to be miles ahead of your weapons to make it a compelling choice. The modern Destiny sandbox has so many tools built directly into your weapons that, well, roaming supers just aren't as necessary anymore. Currently, the tides have shifted a bit. Roaming supers are back on the menu, and the primary reason is actually due to a solution to an issue I brought up not too long ago. Bungie correctly identified that a key issue with roaming supers was their uptime. By having long cooldowns, and sometimes having longer cooldowns than their instant super counterparts, it was extremely difficult for these supers to do what they were designed to do. Remember, the goal of a roaming super is for it to be a primary part of your add clear gameplay loop, not just a bonus tool like an instant super. Roaming supers demand a high uptime, so Bungie did just that. Roaming supers now recharge energy 3 times faster than before. In combination with certain exotic armor pieces or weapons, these supers can now be cast very quickly in quick succession. Now that you can integrate a roaming super easily into an add clear build, they are finally starting to see widespread use. Like I said before, roaming supers are actually pretty strong on their own. Now that you could have a build that truly revolves around the use of a roaming super, they are able to shine in a way they didn't before. Something else that helps to positively contribute to roaming supers is actually something that has been in the game for a long time now, and that's exotic support. Roaming supers by far have the most exotic armor support, and it's always been like that. These exotics, of course, saw little play due to the fact that roaming supers themselves saw little play. Super augmentation exotics have always been a bit hard to justify using. On one hand, they usually provide a big boost to your super, but on the other, they do next to nothing outside of that super. For a roaming super exotic, this is detrimental. Let's look at Stormdancer's Brace as an example. Stormtrance was always bad. If Chaos Reach is the winning option in the super lottery, well, something is definitely wrong. Stormdancer's Brace adds damage to Stormtrance and refunds super energy based on the number of enemies defeated. Before the roaming super adjustments, your Stormtrance might take up maybe about 5 to 10% of your gameplay loop. For the other 90% of the time, you were playing just neutral game. During that neutral game, Stormdancer's Brace literally did nothing. There was no justification to wear it because it provided no benefit for the neutral game. But now, where you can get your super back way faster, your super is now taking up between 30 to 40% of your gameplay. In comparison to before, there is now a real reason to wear your Stormdancer's Brace. The same applies to other roaming super exotics, especially those that may provide a neutral game benefit as well, like with Ballador's Wraithweavers, if they weren't currently disabled. The combination of having a strong base level strength mixed with the great exotic support was enough to make roaming supers good in a vacuum, but not good enough to make them the meta option. But after finally receiving a much needed energy gain buff, these supers are finally able to find their way into players' builds. Instant cast supers have been the best choice in the game for a long time simply due to their ease of use and effectiveness. I would say even with the buffs to roaming supers, instant supers are probably still the best overall choice for loadouts. With encounters designed in a way that dissuades the use of roaming supers, it only makes sense. It's hard to overthrow an ability archetype that minimizes investment requirements while simultaneously maximizing usefulness, whether that's in DPS or in utility. But in those situations where you just need to bulldoze through a bunch of adds, roaming supers are finally a real option. They are great at what they're made to do. They open up new lines for build crafting, they bring underutilized exotic armor back into the limelight, and above everything else, they're just kind of fun to play with, I'm not gonna lie. But maybe that's just my opinion. What do you think? Are you using roaming supers right now? Would you consider them to be the new meta? Let me know your thoughts on supers down below in the comments or over in our Discord server, linked in the video description. And of course, if you found the video even a little bit interesting, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. You definitely don't want to miss any future Destiny analysis videos that I have planned. But I think that's all I've got for now. As always, I've been Rizeki, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.